we discuss solarpunk ideology, things we can do in our communities to make them better, and ways to build the world that we want to live in. First of all, I want to say I am astonished by the support I've received for this podcast. It's only been a month, and while I don't understand completely how Spotify works yet, I've gotten hundreds of impressions and have managed to convert a lot of them into repeat listeners. So I am so thankful for everyone who has listened to all the current episodes. If you shared this podcast with friends and family, thank you so much. You're helping Solarpunking grow and helping to spread the message of a better alternative. Today, let's talk about safety. Things just got a whole lot less safe for a lot of people, especially immigrants and trans people in this country. I've actually wanted to do this episode for a while now, but my day-to-day work and legal research involves a lot of immigration law, and I wanted to make sure that I had useful and accurate input to share first, because we are seeing that a lot of the old rules aren't applying under this new regime. I also really struggle with not wanting this podcast to become yet another current events podcast, because there are plenty of daily shows out there to remind you of the chaos happening in our country. And my primary goal is to remind you that it doesn't have to be this way and that we can fight for a better future. But it would be silly of me to think I can plant those seeds inside a vacuum, so here we are. Let's talk about the growing police state, the ICE raids kidnapping people across the country, and the defunding of the NOAA and FEMA. All of these situations are making all of us less safe, and I do mean all of us. We are currently living in a police state. I'm uncertain whether people truly understand what that means, so I'm going to jump right in with a clip from Democracy Now! Of Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota explaining our current conditions.
We are in the midst of the creation of a police state where, you have masked, armed men snatching people off the streets, unwilling to identify themselves. You have states' rights being disregarded, a constitutional crisis that's being created in front of our eyes. And the same week where we have a president who has deployed the military, who are trained to kill our enemies, not Americans, but our enemies. It's the same week that we are going to have a military parade. Can you imagine that image that is going to be coming out of our country? I mean, I grew up in a dictatorship. And I don't even remember ever witnessing anything like that. To have a democracy, a beacon of hope for the world to now be turned into one of the worst countries where the military are in our streets without any regard for people's constitutional rights, while our president is spending millions of dollars propping himself up like a failed dictator. It is really shocking, and it should be a wake-up call for all Americans.
So my fear is that so many people are choosing their battles right now, and rightfully so, but that they are not fully aware of this threat and what it means for all of us, regardless of citizenship status. This Republican regime is currently plotting ways to fill their private prisons with bodies, and they do not care how they get them there. From the return of unconstitutional debtors' prisons that would incarcerate people for unpaid debts and fees, which we already know they're doing, by the way. In 2024, a St. Louis suburb had to pay $4.5 million in a settlement of a class action lawsuit that proved that they were operating a debtors' prison, incarcerating more than 15,000 people for failing to pay fines. To their attempts to deny birthright citizenship, which is foundational to this country, they are essentially trying to expand slavery. This should concern all of us, and I know sometimes it can be tiring to hear that, especially if you're part of an audience like this one. But it has to be said, because as we all attempt to prioritize our focus in this country, I truly believe that this is a big one that we need to pay attention to and build protective plans for. I personally don't believe we can rely on the courts right now. I just want to play a quick clip from Native Land Pod where Angela Rye expresses the amount of urgency that is needed in this moment.
And so birthright citizenship, which we all have because of the 14th Amendment, is now being challenged on every side by this administration. The fact that this man is talking about deporting people who are criminals, and let's be super, super clear about the fact, because some of y'all might be silly enough. Tiff might think you dumb. I might think you're silly. Some of y'all might be silly enough to think, well, if they're a criminal, they can go. Well, how many of y'all, if you're honest and you throw your bias out the window, know you have someone who's incarcerated in your family, one of your friends? We all know someone who's been wrongfully accused. So Donald Trump saying that someone committed this crime does not make it so. This country has a pattern and practice and deep treacherous history of saying that Black people committed crimes they did not. In fact, the National Registry of Exoneration's annual report says nearly 61% of exonerees are Black. They're exonerated because they did not commit the damn crime. So I want to be clear when I say we know that deportations could also apply to citizens, and those citizens would look like us. Why? Because we're just as other as the Asian. We're just as other as the indigenous person. We're just as other as our Latino brothers and sisters.
I recently attended a webinar presented by the Western Center for Agricultural Health and Safety at UC Davis, where they talked about the impact of and how to prepare for these ice raids that are sweeping cities around the country. They talked a lot about what to do if a raid happens and how to maintain control and calm in a stressful situation like that. But first, I want to highlight a tactic called ruses. I'm actually going to read this straight from the Immigration Defense Project's report on ruses. A ruse is a strategy for ICE to get access to the person they have pre-identified and targeted for arrest. ICE's plan in using ruses is to lure an individual into a public space or gain permission to enter the home to see if that individual is there. Once ICE agents visually identify the person they are looking for, they can complete their goal of identifying and arresting the person. ICE agents are allowed and encouraged to use ruses. ICE agents use ruses to gain entry to homes without judicial warrants or to obtain information about the individual for whom they are looking. One common ruse is where ICE agents pretend to be local law enforcement in order to hide that they are ICE. ICE agents rarely have judicial warrants, so they need consent to be able to enter a home. Knowing that people are unlikely to give consent if they know the agents are ICE, ICE agents lie about who they are and what they are doing so that unsuspecting individuals will let them into the home and won't know that they can exercise their rights. So what does that look like? It's pretending to be a food delivery person. It's pretending to be the cops. It's pretending that they're trying to locate someone to help them, or something as silly as saying they found a lost dog. They will lie to your face to gain access to you in your home, and they are encouraged to do so in officially sanctioned ICE policies. So that brings me to red cards. So red cards were created by the Immigration Legal Resource Center, which was founded by Bill Ong-Hing, a well-known immigration rights attorney. The ILRC seeks to improve immigration law and policy, expand the capacity of legal service providers, and advance immigrant rights by training attorneys, paralegals, and community-based advocates who work with immigrants around the country. They inform the media, elected officials, and public to shape effective and just immigration policy and law, and their staff works with grassroots immigrant organizations to promote civic engagement and social change. Their red cards give examples of how people can exercise their rights regardless of whether they are citizens or non-citizens. However, they cannot provide individualized legal advice, and the ILRC encourages anyone with legal questions to check in with a trusted legal service provider. But these cards give out basic tips that will help in an interaction with an ICE agent. For example, you do not have to open the door to a private residence or property. Do not answer any questions from an immigrant agent. Do not sign anything from an immigrant agent without speaking to a lawyer first, which is your right. If you're in a public area, ask if you're free to leave, and if they say yes, then leave. If you're in your home, you can show this card to an agent by holding it against a window. Now, it also provides a basic script that you can use to deny consent to any agent attempting to search your home or property, such as, I do not wish to speak to you, answer your questions, or sign or hand you documents based on my Fifth Amendment rights under the United States Constitution. I do not give you permission to enter my home based on my Fourth Amendment rights under the United States Constitution unless you have a warrant to enter signed by a judge or magistrate with my name on it that you slide under the door. Now, this part is especially important because ICE agents don't usually have judicial warrants. These are warrants signed by a judge that give them permission to legally detain someone or search a private space. This is not the same as an administrative warrant, which is what they can sometimes have. It needs to be a judicial warrant signed by a judge to hold weight. I do not give you permission to search any of my belongings based on my Fourth Amendment rights. I choose to exercise my constitutional rights. Now, where it gets tricky is that some ICE agents are no longer following the laws, and we've seen many instances of agents violating these rights, and there have even been some instances of ghouls pretending to be ICE agents and abducting people right off the street. So I'm going to add that one of the best legal defenses people have right now is a cell phone with a camera that can record the incidents. They are riding high on fascism right now, but the law will eventually catch up to them, just like it did for the Nazis that claim to be just following orders. If you find yourself in immigration court, having that documentation on your side could prove very useful, like it did for Yumesa Aturk, Mohsen Mandawi, and Mahmoud Khalil. I would like to play a small clip from Mahmoud's press conference after his release from federal detention because it shows incredible courage.
Here I am. Here I am with you. First, I'm grateful to be standing freely next to you all. I'm grateful to my wife, Noor, whose support, love, and care has kept me upright. And I'm grateful to every single person who stood by me during this time. Of course, I'm also thankful of the amazing legal and the larger team, who without them, I wouldn't have done this. I would like to salute the courage of all students at Colombia and across the nation. These students who continue to protest, I want to honor especially my friends at Columbia University. Especially those who are currently battling expulsion and suspension for their consciousness stand. As many of you know, the Board of Trustees at Columbia, the shameful Board of Trustees at Columbia, is currently attempting to expel 15 more students and to suspend tens of others, basically stealing their future, their degrees, their labor, merely because these students are not afraid. These students are not afraid to stand for Palestine. Columbia University will do everything and anything it can to ensure that the words "Free Palestine" are not uttered anywhere near it. But while we are here, free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Viva, viva Palestina! Viva, viva Palestina!
I fear this is only going to get worse, so I'm going to continue to dig into legal resources that are available for folks out there who might encounter this nightmare. Let's talk about the defunding of the NOAA and how it relates to this recent Texas storm. So as of last night, there were reports coming in that there are more than 50 people dead and over 240 have been rescued from the deadly flooding in central Texas. The Texas National Guard are in the area, but we cannot ignore the impact that gutting the NOAA has had on disasters like this. DOJ also cut or froze at least $4 billion of FEMA funding. Eric Halthus of The Guardian wrote an article explaining how the cuts to these critical agencies has affected the emergency responses in different cities, and how harsh staffing cuts and budget restrictions have forced federal meteorologists to attempt to forecast the carnage with less data. He further explains that cuts to the Weather Service by Trump and the so-called Department of Government Efficiency have left NWS local forecast offices critically understaffed throughout this year's heightened severe weather. In April, an internal document reportedly described how cuts could create a situation of degraded operations, shutting down core services one by one until it reaches an equilibrium that doesn't overtax its remaining employees. There is no doubt, at least among the climate science community, that we are actively contributing to the escalation of these storms by not addressing climate change with the clearly outlined solutions they have provided us. But not only are we making these storms more powerful and more dangerous, this regime is cutting the funding that will help people when they are inevitably hit with the devastation from these storms. There is nowhere on this planet that isn't affected by the increasing threat of natural disasters, and there's nowhere in this country where people won't need support in the aftermath. I'm going to play a clip from MSNBC of NBC meteorologist John Morales warning that he won't be able to properly warn his community due to budget cuts in the NOAA.
As you've grown accustomed to my presentations over my 34 years in South Florida newscasts, confidently, I went on TV and I told you it's going to turn. You don't need to worry. It is going to turn. And I am here to tell you that I am not sure I can do that this year because of the cuts, the gutting, the sledgehammer attack on science in general, and I could talk about that for a long, long time, and how that is affecting the U.S. Leadership in science over many years, and how we're losing that leadership, and this is a multi-generational impact on science in this country, all right? But specifically, let's talk about the federal government cuts to the National Weather Service and to NOAA. Did you know that Central and South Florida National Weather Service offices are currently basically 20 to 40% understaffed? From Tampa to Key West, including the Miami office, 20 to 40% understaffed. Now, this type of staffing shortage is having impacts across the nation because there's been a nearly 20% reduction in weather balloon releases, launches, that carry those radiosondes. And what we're starting to see is that the quality of the forecasts is becoming degraded. There's also a chance, because of some of these cuts, that NOAA Hurricane Hunter aircraft will not be able to fly this year, and with less reconnaissance missions, we may be flying blind. And we may not exactly know how strong a hurricane is before it reaches the coastline, like happened a couple of years ago in Hurricane Otis in Acapulco, Mexico. So I was asked to talk about this today. I'm glad I was. I just want you to know that what you need to do is call your representatives and make sure that these cuts are stopped.
I've thrown a lot at y'all in this episode, and my goal here isn't just awareness, but action. Whenever I read about something heinous happening or a disaster, my first thought is always, what can I do and how can I help? Why are you telling me this thing that will negatively affect my mental health if I can't do anything about it? Well, I think there's always something we can do to help, whether that be continuing to spread awareness so that more and more people get involved, donating money if you have excess funds, collecting other resources that are needed, or filling a need that might be absent in some other way. This is where the hopeful Solarpunk strategies come in to alleviate all of the doom and gloom of our current predicament. So here's what you can do. Keep an eye on the ACLU press releases about birthright citizenship lawsuits. There is a case that was recently filed on June 27th responding to the Supreme Court ruling. The ACLU, ACLU of New Hampshire, ACLU of Massachusetts, Legal Defense Fund, Asian Law Caucus, and Democracy Defenders all filed on behalf of those of us that would be subject to this ruling. And just to clarify once more, that means all of us. I will add the most recent press release in the show notes below. You can contact the ILRC and order some red cards. Now, the cards themselves are free, but depending on how many you order, you may have to cover some of the printing fees. Or you can print them at home. They also have templates for you to do that as well if you have access to a printer. You can do this at their website, and I'll provide it in the show notes. Keep a card for yourself if you need one, and distribute the rest among friends, families, co-workers, neighbors, and community members who you think would benefit from that information. If you have an iPhone, you can download the IceBlock app by All You Chart Inc. The app helps users stay informed about reported ice sightings within a 5-mile radius of your current location in real time while maintaining your privacy. IceBlock is a community-driven app that allows you to share and discover location-based reports without revealing any personal data. Bioweather Radio. There are a lot of different models online, and while I hate to drive any traffic to Amazon, you can find a good selection of them there. You want to try and get one that has weather alerts as well, because it will sound an alarm for you when there's a warning coming from your weather station. This will help you stay informed if you live in an area with evacuation plans, and help you build your own if you live in an area that it doesn't. You can even push further than that and look into ham radio licensing so you can join the network in your community. Lastly, stay informed but prioritize your mental health. Try not to fall into the trap of doom scrolling. Take breaks from the news, social media, and this podcast if you need to. An empty cup cannot fill others, so make sure to prioritize your health and safety as well. This week I'm going to leave you with a clip that I find very inspiring. I'm a huge fan of folk music, especially African American folk and bluegrass. This is Buffalo Nichols singing his song Belly of the Beast, and I highly recommend checking out his channels if you haven't already. He also has an amazing Tiny Desk concert that you can catch on NPR Music. I hope you find his music as comforting and as inspirational as I do.
I live in the belly of the beast, though I only meant to look into his mouth. Was not opportunity, but chains he used to capture me. I've been trying every day to get back out. I live in the belly of the beast. This land was built with cruel machines, bones of millions, stolen dreams. How did we all get down here? What evil have we done to deserve the cruelty of America? I live in the belly of the beast. I live in the belly of the beast, where the policemen come around every so often, cut you down. No, not to help you when you fall, no, not to hear you when you call, just to remind you that you got no rights at all. When you live in the belly of the beast, when you live in the belly of the beast, no constitution justify, no ethnic cleansing, sanitize, illegal occupation, colonial domination. Yeah, these great big words are heavy on my mind. I live in the belly of the beast. I live in the belly of the beast.
Thanks for listening to episode 5 of Solarpunking. You can catch new episodes every Sunday this summer, where I will talk about solarpunk ideology, things we can do in our communities to make them better, and ways to build the world that we want to live in. If you've enjoyed listening in so far, consider sharing this podcast with your friends and family members that you think would also like to join the movement. Also, consider leaving me a comment to let me know what you liked and didn't like, or if you have mutual aid resources you want me to look into. I'm still researching that, and I will have an episode ready to go pretty soon. Again, thank you so much to everyone who has subscribed and left comments. I really appreciate it. Until next week, stay hydrated and motivated. Peace.